movies of 1999. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 47 of the Movies of 1999, a podcast where we watch a movie from 1999 each week as selected by a bingo machine. My name is Jason Hutchins.
And I'm Craig Talbot.
And in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about An Ideal Husband, which is the movie we selected last week, or the movie that the bingo machine selected for us last week. And that was paired with a movie called Snow Falling on Cedars. Now, Craig, we're recording this on Sunday. We normally record on Saturday, but I was in Sydney for my work's Christmas party, so sorry for giving you the runaround there. But at the Christmas party, I got to meet a lot of our listeners, which was,
did you?
Which was quite interesting. So Jimbo, Paul, Sheepy, Mike, there's a whole bunch of listeners over in Sydney.
Right.
And they gave me a couple of stories. So as you might know, some of our Sydney-based listeners very disappointed in my review of The Mummy. And
oh, no.
Yeah. where I famously gave it 2 out of 5 stars. So we had quite a few robust discussions about that, let me say. Jimbo was transported back to his school days with Snow Falling on Cedars when I mentioned that, because they studied that in school.
Right.
And watched the movie. But he also had an interesting tale about being in The Matrix. So he is in The Matrix,
right,
which is a movie that we talked
Fair
about.
enough.
But he's in The Matrix because they filmed the office scene. Remember the office scene where Mr. Anderson is sort of crouching behind desks and
Yes.
avoiding Agent Smith? As he's crouching behind desks, he passes Jimbo's dad's real-life office, because that's where they filmed it.
Right.
And there's a photograph of young Jimbo, a framed photograph, that they just left on the desk.
Right.
Yeah, so they didn't sort of do the set dressing to the extent that you normally would do. Or it wasn't filmed in a set. It was just filmed in his dad's office, and there's a photo of him. So there you go. I met someone who was in The Matrix. Anyway.
Wow. Okay.
It's a bit of a long story. On another note, I got an email from another listener during the week congratulating me on my fantastic Reese Witherspoon joke that I did a few podcasts ago. I think it was it might have been the Two Hands podcast. But
right.
I said that thing, did you hear about that actress who stabbed someone? What's her name? Reese? And you say Witherspoon?
Right.
No, with a no.
Right.
Anyway, I got some kudos for that one. So there you go.
And what about me? Did I get any positive comments, or is it all just about you today?
Strangely, they didn't say anything about
Oh, thanks a lot.
No, we didn't just talk about the podcast. It was just a brief lunchtime conversation. But no, we talked about the intermissions and things.
Right. Gee. Okay.
Yeah. So one of our Sydney listeners is listening to the whole thing from episode 1, so he's still catching up.
Right.
Yeah, it's quite impressive that there are people out there. So hello to
all of our listeners. Yeah.
Anywho, just looping back around, getting back on track. The app that I use for my notes has decided not to load this morning, so I'm flying blind. But I believe I normally ask you, Craig, why do you think I selected An Ideal Husband to be on the A-list?
An Ideal Husband. Well, I'd say it's based on a Oscar Wilde play.
Yeah, it's the Oscar Wilde.
And directed by Oliver Parker. 85% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, and 69% audience score, which I'm surprised at. I actually probably enjoyed this movie more than a lot that we've watched. I genuinely enjoyed this.
It has a lot of humour in it, the Oscar Wilde humour, but a lot of fast-moving dialogue. And
yes,
maybe that's a bit... Maybe that's part of the reason why it doesn't score as highly. Because there is a lot of wordplay and quick dialogue and stuff.
Yeah. In vast contrast to our other movie, to be honest, Snow Falling on Cedars, which is almost the exact opposite in terms of speed of
It's a very serenely paced movie, that one.
Yeah, serene is another one word. Very, very slow is another one. There's a lot of significant looks in Snow Falling on Cedars and a lot of very quiet dialogue.
Well, why do you think I paired that one with this movie then?
I really don't know why you paired the two together. Yeah, I honestly...
We'll see if ChatGPT can figure it out.
They are both period dramas. I mean, different periods, but they're period dramas.
The controversy with Snow Falling on Cedars is you pointed out on the weekend that wasn't that an F-list movie, and I went back and checked the notes that I sent you back in December last year, and indeed it was on the F-list. I have no recollection as to why or when I moved it onto the B list. But I do remember you. Yeah, I do remember you saying you moved some movies off the F list at the very beginning of the podcast. Right,
it was a long time ago.
I imagine it's because I realised it was a Scott Hicks movie. So he's an Australian director who directed Shine, right? And that's probably the reason why. Because looking at the movie poster, it looks like this pretty boring, romance in the snow. It turned out to be something quite different, of course. But I think I moved it onto the B list because of the Scott Hicks factor, because I was a big fan of Shine at the time. And I do have a story to tell about Shine when we get to that. But anyway, before we go into the discussion, let's throw over to ChatGPT for its synopsis of An Ideal Husband.
An Ideal Husband is a delightful romantic comedy that unfolds in Victorian London, centering on Sir Robert Chiltern, Jeremy Northam, a respected politician with a seemingly flawless reputation. His idyllic life with his virtuous wife, Lady Gertrude Chiltern, Cate Blanchett, is jeopardized when the cunning Mrs. Laura Shevley, Julianne Moore, arrives with evidence of a past indiscretion that could destroy his career and marriage. In desperation, Sir Robert seeks the help of his witty and carefree friend, Lord Arthur Goring, Rupert Everett, who becomes entangled not only in solving the dilemma, but also in his own romantic pursuits with Sir Robert's sister, Mabel Chiltern, Minnie Driver. The film weaves a humorous and insightful tale of blackmail, love, and the pursuit of integrity, all brought to life by stellar performances from its ensemble cast.
And Craig, what did you think of this movie?
As I think I've already mentioned, I absolutely loved this, and I think I exclaimed at the end of the movie night that I absolutely loved it, despite what there was a lot of snide comments made about this movie during the movie by certain people sitting on my left.
Right.
And he claims to be an actual fan of the movie now, but he was pretty critical of it. And also, annoyingly, I had to go back and watch the movie again when I got home, because it's on SBS for those who are interested, because a lot of our friends were talking through the movie, and it's a very fast-paced movie.
That's right.
And so it was really hard to hear all the dialogue, so I had to go back and listen to the dialogue.
That's
again.
right, yeah, and the dialogue is so important with Oscar Wilde.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the period setting puts people off, and I know that people were burnt by Topsy-Turvy, which was a bit of a 3-hour slog, wasn't it? But this movie was 90 minutes or so. It was
I mean, several of your friends have not been back since Topsy-Turvy, so I'm not sure what happened. Yeah, there's at least one friend I know of yours who has not reappeared since.
Yeah. So. Well, once bitten, twice shy. I do have a reputation for screening controversial movies, so I thought I was over that now. So what I really liked about this movie was that Oscar Wilde himself showed up on stage. There's a very brief moment. When I say Oscar Wilde himself, I mean Stephen Fry. He was in this little cameo where he popped up on stage because they watched the importance of being earnest as part of this movie, didn't they?
Yes, and the movie Importance of Being Earnest, which also stars Rupert Everett, I'd recommend that highly. It's hilarious.
Yeah. But Stephen Fry is a big Oscar Wilde fan and played Oscar Wilde in the biopic that they made.
I must admit, when I looked at him closely, though, I wasn't sure it was Stephen Fry. It looks like someone.
It must have been.
No, I know. It does look like him, but I was confused because the face wasn't quite right. Maybe it was the makeup.
Bruce
but
and
I can't actually find.
No, you're right. It wasn't him.
I can't find him in the credits.
It's Michael Culkin. So there
Right.
you go. Bruce and I were both fooled because
Yeah,
we
I
both
know.
thought it was a Stephen
From
Fry
a
cameo.
distance, yeah, from a distance, it definitely looks like him.
Well,
But when you get a close up of his face, it's not him, and I was confused.
What a pity. But yeah, Mike. Well, that's a factoid that I have to retract. If you do go on Internet Movie Database and look at photos of Michael Culkin in this movie, you'll see the confusion, and it was like a shot from the balcony as well. So anyway,
yeah, it's understandable.
Let's pretend that last 2 minutes never happened.
Okay, fine. This movie had a budget of £6.3 million, which I'm going to say at the time was probably close to $12 million US. It was about double at the time. I could be wrong on that. Box office of £14.1 million. Again, probably about $28 million US. And it was nominated for 3 BAFTA awards, and it didn't win any, but it was nominated for Best Screenplay Adapted, Best Costume Design, and Best Makeup and Hair. It did win some awards. The Chicago... Oh, no, it didn't win that one either. It won Jeremy Northam Best Actor in the Evening Standard British Film Awards, which I found interesting. It was also nominated for 2 Golden Globes. Julianne Moore and Rupert Everett were both nominated.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, for me, I love Rupert Everett. I think he's hilarious. And he's,
Yeah, I think Jeremy Northam is better than Rupert Everett in this movie, to be honest. And Julianne Moore was a bit of a weird choice, didn't you think? And it was just...
But she did it really well.
She did it well, but I mean, I guess she was a bit of a rising star. She was in everything around this time, wasn't she? I think Cate Blanchett was very good.
Yes, Cate Blanchett was fantastic.
She's always good value. The thing with Jeremy Northam, we've seen him in 2 other movies this year. In Happy Texas, where he was trying to become an American sex symbol, I think.
Right.
But also in The Winslow Boy, where he played Sir Robert as well. So he was Sir Robert in 2 movies. Wasn't that weird?
Yes. Yeah, no, I think Jeremy Northam was very good and played a good, dramatic role in a comedy, if you like.
That's right.
A straight role.
The straight role. And I think that's what I enjoy about his role. And I think I really appreciate the straight roles in comedies like this, whereas the Rupert Everett role is a bit more exaggerated and over the top, you know what I mean?
Yes. I absolutely loved Rupert Everett, but I'm a huge fan of his. And, I mean, he's just an incredibly handsome man. So you can't help but, really enjoy
After last week's episode,
him.
You're going to give me another quote.
I know. Yes, I'm well aware of your homophobia.
I'm not homophobic.
No, I'm joking. Look, I would imagine that at this time there were a lot of women who melted every single time they saw Rupert on screen.
Yeah.
But then were severely disappointed because, he's
because of the
he's
type
not
of
that
character
way.
that he played. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
But he always
plays this...
a fairly unlikable character in the end, isn't he? I guess he did redeem himself by the end.
I think, there is a bit of a redemption arc for Lord Goring in this movie. And, I mean, he's also brilliant in The Importance of Being Earnest. He plays almost the same role, probably slightly more. It's probably a funnier movie in the end. But, look, I absolutely loved this. It received very positive reviews from critics, including Roger Ebert, who awarded it 3 out of 4 stars. Owen Gleiberman of Entertainment Weekly wrote the film is an enjoyable, minor, lustrously shot revamping of Oscar Wilde's play.
Yeah.
Everett gets all the good lines, but he's daring enough to deliver them gently. And there's a little comment here. Brevity is the soul of wit. This adaptation gets to the nitty-gritty of Wilde's stage piece and plays on internal human foibles. There's actually quite a few changes to the film compared to the play.
Yeah? What are some of those?
Well, the episode in the play, Mrs. Cheverly loses a bracelet, which isn't in the film. There's some twists at the end that are made more complex because there's this bet between Lord Goring and Mrs. Cheverly, and also this whole thing where Lord Goring needed to ask permission of Sir Robert Chiltern to marry his sister, Mabel. and he sort of originally doesn't give his consent, because so none of that's in the play.
So they trimmed a bit of fat to get it down to the 90 minutes, I guess.
Yeah. They've actually added a little bit and trimmed a little bit and done, So, anyway, there's a lot of, well, not a lot of factoids about this movie. There's a few interesting ones where there was some errors in the movie. So, for example, Lord Goring is referred to at one point as Lord Arthur Goring, whereas in real life he would have been referred to as Arthur Lord Goring.
Right.
There's a lot of protocol things.
Yeah.
There's a thing where he says who instead of whom. Being a lord, he would have been much more grammatically correct at the time. So apparently that's a thing.
You reckon Lord Goring would have cared about that?
Probably not, but he was a lord and he was educated in the best schools, one assumes. So there you go. In the establishing shot for the House of Commons, the Palace of Westminster is shown from the Westminster Bridge, but there's a light that is normally lit, which is the Ayrton light, which is, since 1885, if the house is sitting, a green light is visible above the clock face to let you know that the house is currently sitting.
Yeah.
There's little traditions like that. There's another one.
But that shot itself, because I noticed that shot, it must have been CGI or something, because it was all...
I reckon it's painted.
Horse-drawn carriages. But I mean, the road itself was busy with traffic, but it was all horses and stuff like that.
Yes, but I'm pretty sure the background was painted.
Right, yeah. So it's just...
very well painted, but it was painted. There's also a scene where MPs are shown wearing top hats in Parliament.
Right.
This is not a thing. MPs didn't and still don't wear hats during the session of the House.
People want a documentary.
This is actually a thing in Australian Parliament as well. If you want to raise a point of order in Parliament, it's carried over to the Australian Parliament, you had to wear a top hat. You had to put a top hat on to say that you wanted to raise a point of order. Now, in Australia, we never wore the top hats. So you quite often see Australian politicians putting pieces of paper on their head.
Yeah.
And people often wonder why on earth they're doing that. They've actually got a thing on top of their head, and that's harking back to this day when you had to put a top hat on to say you wanted to raise a point of order. So we don't do that in the Australian Parliament. We don't wear wigs and all that kind of stuff, but they do put things on their head to say they want to raise a point of order. It's like putting up your hand.
Yep.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting anyway, but okay, fine. Be like that.
No, it's interesting, but I mean, this movie doesn't have to... it's not a documentary.
No, I know.
Just a breezy 90-minute comedy.
Yeah, look, it's very funny. The original Broadway production of An Ideal Husband by Oscar Wilde opened at the Lyceum Theatre in 1895, and it was brought to Broadway in 1918 and then again in 1996. I'm sure it's been on many, many places ever since then. There are 3 films based on works of Oscar Wilde directed by Oliver Parker, one being The Importance of Being Earnest, which I've mentioned, which is 2002, and Dorian Gray, which is 2009. So I imagine they're all quite good. And I would be very surprised if Rupert Everett isn't in all 3. I'm pretty sure he is, actually. And not that I'm obsessed with Rupert Everett in any way, shape or form, but I am a bit. Yeah, there's a little scene where there's a green carnation that Arthur selects for his buttonhole, and apparently that's an homage to Oscar Wilde. Wilde and his inner circle of gay friends used to wear green carnations as a way of discreetly displaying their sexuality. So a bit like what is it, Grindr for the 1880s. So your green carnation.
So did that imply something about Lord Goring?
Could have done, but then he gets married. So I mean, in real life he's gay, of course.
We didn't mention that Minnie Driver is in this movie as well. And
she's good.
There are a few comments on the movie night that it sort of felt weird. I think Bruce said it. She feels a bit out of place in a movie like this, but I thought she worked really well.
No, I thought she was good. The only thing I found interesting was that she kept her Irish accent, despite her family heritage being very English. But I thought that was, I actually thought she was very good, and I think she played the role really well. She was a good foil for Lord Goring.
She's quite good in comedies, I think, Minnie Driver.
Yeah, I think she was good. I think everyone in this movie was excellent. Kate Blanchett was fantastic, and I mean, she always is. And I think Julianne Moore actually was very good as well. I really enjoyed her role in this movie. I thought she did really well.
It's just interesting that they chose her out of all the people who could have been in it, because clearly there would have been many qualified actresses that could have played that role.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of information about who they went through to get, but I mean, this is a very busy year, so
and this, like, on Internet Movie Database, there's like 5 pieces of trivia about this movie. It's not like something.
I did find some more, but I had to go to another site to find some more information about it. So I apologise. The closing scene of The Importance of Being Earnest is shown as taking place in a garden, whereas that is actually the setting for Act 2. The final Act 3 takes place in the morning room of the Manor House in Woolton. So that was a bit odd. They actually showed the play in the garden, so there's a few little errors. Importance of Being Earnest is performed in the background of this movie in quite a number of scenes.
Yeah.
And there's references to it quite a bit. There was a very strange anachronism at the Chilterns' home because Sir Robert was requested to meet the Indian ambassador. In 1895, India was a British possession and there wouldn't have been an ambassador. In fact, I don't think they still have an ambassador. I think they're pretty much like Australia. They have what's called a High Commissioner because they're a member of the Commonwealth. I could be wrong about that, though, because India is a little bit different to Australia. It's more independent than Australia. But, yeah, there's quite a few instances of the crew being visible in this movie, apparently.
Oh, really?
The camera hits a large vase of orange flowers at one point and causes them to move.
Are you joking?
Yeah, just as... Yeah, and there's another one where Gertrude is visible in a mirror behind Mabel, but she shouldn't be able to be visible because she's seated the whole scene.
Right.
So she must have stood up. And then there's a whole bunch of silliness about Lord Goring's jacket where it's buttoned and then unbuttoned and buttoned and unbuttoned in one particular scene, and it's like the continuity is kind of a little bit broken.
That's funny. I normally pick up on stuff like that, especially the camera hitting the flowers. That would have been
I think you were
obvious.
probably too busy laughing. And anyway, so there's some really great quotes from this, and I restrained myself and only picked 2.
Okay.
So fashion is what one wears oneself. What is unfashionable is what other people wear. Other people are quite dreadful. The only possible society is oneself, and that's from Lord Goring, of course. And I would say that's a mantra for the 2020s, isn't it? Fashion is now what one wears.
Yeah.
Right. You know, there's no real set fashions anymore. And then there's another good one. Lord Caversham says, "What are you doing here, sir? Wasting your time as usual?" And Lord Goring says, "My dear father, when one pays a visit, it is for the purpose of wasting other people's time and not one's own." I quite like that one too. So apparently when I come to your house for the movie night, I'm wasting your time, not mine.
I did like his father as well. He was, the relationship they had was quite amusing.
Yeah, no, that was quite well done. The credits list Oliver Parker, the director, is playing Bunbury, one of the gentlemen that is seen playing cards with Lord Goring in the men's club when Lord Chiltern arrives. You know how there's that scene? And Bunbury is also a never-seen character in The Importance of Being Earnest, and so on and so forth.
So who was Bunbury in the... Bunbury is an imaginary sick friend invented by a character as an excuse to visit the country.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And
so,
Mabel...
So going to Bunbury.
Yes. Going to see Bunbury, yeah. Yeah. Mabel says to look at a thing is quite different from seeing a thing, and one does not see anything until one sees its beauty. As you mentioned, like, it is Oscar Wilde. You could probably put him, in terms of his pacing and all that kind of thing, I think you could put him up there with Aaron Sorkin in terms of they're similar in there, like, and this is probably one of the reasons why I struggled with the next movie, because I've got used to the pacing of very fast things, and then I had to go back to something that was very different. So,
and people interrupting each other and talking over the top of each other and all of that quick fire dialogue.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So
no, it was a fun movie. I think it was a good movie night movie. It's nice that it was just 90 minutes long, and most of us found it quite amusing. I know that Dana earlier, our Spinderella, she really enjoyed this movie.
Right.
Yeah,
excellent.
she loves Oscar Wilde, so she got a lot of laughs out of it as well. But
Yeah.
I think I hear the approaching sounds, the dulcet tones
Of the intermission.
Of this week's. Yes.
All right, welcome to the intermission, everyone. This week, just because I like to make Jason suffer and also myself, apparently, because I had to watch this movie, we have an F-list movie, which is still on the F-list, or it better be, called Wild Wild West, which
goodness.
is starring
definitely
Kevin Kline.
It's solidly on the F-list, let me tell you.
Yep, Kevin Kline and the very famous bloke whose name I've forgotten. Will Smith. Will Smith and Kenneth Branagh and Salma Hayek. And yeah, it's got quite a cast. But it's directed by Barry Sonnenfeld, who I feel is a famous name, but I can't remember why. This movie has 16% on Rotten Tomatoes and 28% audience score.
Pretty bad.
Probably one of the lowest that we have seen. But it had a box office of 222 million.
Yeah.
Which is why I selected it, because it's actually number 11th for the year.
What was the budget?
In box office taking. However, the budget of this movie is absolutely ridiculous. I think it's the highest budget so far. Right? I can't think of one higher.
What was the budget?
$170 million.
For 1999.
In $1999.
Wow.
So that's a lot.
That puts it on a par with a lot of internet startups at the time, because this was 1999 was the Web 1.0 bubble, wasn't it? And people were throwing money around like crazy. So this is the web startup of movies.
It is interesting that the title is WWW. So I did wonder if there was something in that.
That is true.
But anyway, it's $170 million. I'm not quite sure how they managed that.
No.
I think they spent a lot of money on special effects. And anyway, I should explain what the movie is first. Wild Wild West is a 1999 American steampunk western film directed by Barry Sonnenfeld. The story is set in 1869, 4 years after the end of the American Civil War. The film follows two US agents. I'm not going to say Secret Service agents because they weren't actually at the beginning of the movie. Captain James West and US Marshal Artemus Gordon, respectively played by Will Smith and Kevin Kline, who are tasked with protecting President Ulysses S. Grant, also played by Kevin Kline, and the United States from dangerous threats. Their main adversary is Dr. Arliss Lovelace, Kenneth Branagh, who is a legless ex-Confederate officer, an engineering genius, who plans to assassinate President Grant and divide the United States. And the plot revolves around West and Gordon's efforts to thwart Lovelace's diabolical plans, which include using a giant mechanical spider to wreak havoc.
Yeah. That kind of sounds good on paper, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And look, it has the elements of a good story.
Yeah.
It does have the elements of a good story. They're joined by Salma Hayek as Rita Escobar, who spends most of the movie in some sort of state of undress, to be honest. Apparently that was her role in this movie.
Well, at the time, yeah.
So I'm going to read you the review that Roger Ebert said.
I'm a little bit worried that this is going to become another case of The Mummy. Because
shh, careful. Look, this is the critics, not me.
I wonder if you were 8 years old at the time, whether this would have been just like the best movie ever.
Look, in terms of special effects, I think it's probably one of the biggest special effects movies of the year, to be honest. Ebert described the film as a comedy des zone, criticising its lack of content and its reliance on elaborate special effects. He noted that the film's concept overshadowed its execution, resulted in a disjointed and unengaging experience. And I'm going to read you a little bit more of his thing because it's hilarious. This is the most vicious I've ever heard him write. Wild Wild West is so bad, it violates not one but two rules from Ebert's Bigger Little Movie Glossary. I'm, by the way, not sure if that's true. One of them is in casting M. Emmett Walsh as the train engineer. It invalidates the Stanton-Walsh rule, which states that no movie with Harry Dean Stanton or M. Emmett Walsh can be altogether bad, which is obviously not true in this case. And also, by featuring Kevin Kline without facial hair, it violates the Kevin Kline mustache principle, which observes that Kline wears a mustache in comedies but is clean-shaven in serious roles.
Oh, okay.
Of course, and then he goes on to say he could perhaps use the defence that Wild Wild West is not a comedy. So that's actually how he ends his review.
Oh, yeah.
So he's pretty vicious about this movie. It's got very ambitious special effects and a star-studded cast, but it's a commercial failure and it got panned critically. And it's become a little bit of a cult following because of its blend of Western and steampunk genres.
Yeah, I like the steampunk
and I know there
things,
are, yeah, I know there are some games like board top games that are based around this idea of the Western, the Wild Wild West and steampunk technology and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if that was a thing before this movie, but it's certainly a thing now, as is a lot of things to do with steampunk. I mean, yeah, I didn't go too deep into the trivia of this one, but when Will Smith asked his mother what she thought of the movie, she said, "You've done better, baby." So
and then
it is also...
he slapped her, right?
Yeah. It is highly unlikely. If there's any movie where he's probably likely to get a slapping from his mother, it's this one.
Oh.
It's highly unlikely that chainmail would actually hold against a bullet fired from close range. Even if it did, the impact would certainly break bones and cause severe trauma, which is why they don't use chainmail. Chainmail was very ineffective against rifles. Yes, so there's a lot of quotes from this movie. This was featured in a soundtrack, and what there was a song by Will Smith and Stevie Wonder called Wild Wild West, there, which apparently did quite well. All of that sort of stuff, you know, Will Smith being a fairly famous rap artist as well as actor. Yes, it won a whole bunch of, if you'll allow me, it cleaned out the Raspberry Awards of 2000. So it was nominated for Worst Actor, Worst Supporting Actor, Worst Supporting Actress, Worst Screen Couple, which is Will Smith and Kevin Kline, because there was just no chemistry between them at all. Worst Original Song for Wild Wild West, Worst Screenplay, Worst Director, Worst Picture, and it actually won Worst Screenplay for a film grossing more than $100 million worldwide. It won that from the Stinker Awards. It won quite a number of Stinker Awards and Golden Raspberry Awards. So, and there's a little story, if you'll forgive me. Robert Conrad, who played Jim West in the original TV series, which apparently Will Smith was a big fan of, he actually went and accepted all of the 20th Golden Raspberry Awards because he had protested at how bad the movie was, and he collected them in person and then went off and handed them to the people who won them. So he actually took them in person to them. Okay. He was quite unhappy about this movie and didn't want anything to do with it.
Well,
so apparently the TV series was pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't realise that there was a TV series.
Me neither until today.
So yeah, that's something. And I'm kind of curious to see the movie because I've never seen it.
Oh, right. Yeah. I've seen it several times. Yeah.
But the reason why I've never seen it is because everyone knew, even at the time, that this was a bit of a turkey, this movie. You know?
Yeah.
So it's not like it snuck up on people. But one thing that I really appreciate this movie for is Will Smith turned down the role of Neo in The Matrix to star in this movie. So that's, you know, you've got to be glad that this movie exists.
That's apparently that's his biggest regret. Yeah. He's like, that's the stupidest decision I ever made.
Yeah, well, he would have ruined The Matrix.
I don't know. I don't think he would have suited The Matrix. I think Keanu Reeves was much better.
Because then The Matrix would have had a theme song as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, all of that sort of nonsense. Yes.
The other factoid that I found quite funny is that people say the only reason why this movie earned any money at all is because unaccompanied minors would buy tickets to this movie so they could sneak into South Park. And
Yes. I was coming to that, but you're right. That's totally correct. Yeah. So that's in America mostly. Yeah.
So that's
this was the movie that we were talking about when we were talking about that earlier in the podcast. Yes.
So there was a TV series called Wild Wild West, was there?
Yes. Apparently it ran for about 4 years. Yeah. In the 50s, I'm guessing.
Very interesting.
Or 60s.
So, I had no idea that it was.
Yeah, and Robert Conrad played a Secret Service agent.
Okay. Yeah, 1965 to 1960.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
There you go. But anyway, that's the intermission for this week. The Wild Wild West. Go and watch it. No, don't. I've watched it because you don't have to. Everyone.
Well, thank
This
goodness
is definitely
for
one
that.
of those.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a trial. I've never watched it all the way through. I think this is another one of those ones that I've watched but I haven't watched all the way through. And oh God, it was yeah.
Well, they did say that after test screenings, they realised that audiences didn't know it was a comedy, and they just reacted as if it wasn't a comedy.
To be honest, I struggled with it as a comedy either, because it does come across more as a dramatic, serious, like in the vein of the Marvel movies or in those sort of things, like a superhero kind of. It doesn't come across as funny at all. There's just very little actual. None of the humor really lands properly. I didn't laugh at all. So, anyway.
Oh, well.
Moving on.
There you go. So, I think it's time now to go over to our friend ChatGPT for its synopsis of Snow Falling on Cedars.
Snow Falling on Cedars is a poignant drama set in the mist-shrouded islands of the Pacific Northwest, where journalist Ishmael Chambers, Ethan Hawke, finds himself covering the murder trial of Kazuo Miyamoto, Rick Yoon, a Japanese-American fisherman accused of killing a local man. As the trial stirs up the community's deep-seated prejudices from World War II, Ishmael grapples with his own past, a lost love with Kazuo's wife, Hatsu. The film weaves a rich tapestry of forbidden love, justice, and the scars of war, echoing the themes of moral dilemma and societal pressure found in An Ideal Husband. Both movies delve into how hidden truths and personal ethics shape the lives of their characters, brought vividly to life by exceptional performances from their casts.
Now, Craig, what did you think of this movie?
I have to be careful with this one because my mother-in-law absolutely loves this movie because of where it is, and also because of Family History 101, my wife's family, they owned a newspaper in this area. And they lived on an island not far from the one which this is supposed to be. So this is based on Bainbridge Island, and they lived on an island called Whidbey Island, which is not too far away.
Okay.
And so the family ran a newspaper for many, many years. So it's one of my mother-in-law's favourite movies, probably because of the nostalgia of that.
The newspaper's a big plot point of this movie, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. So, look, I didn't mind this movie, but it was a huge contrast. And I think there's a comment from a critic which will explain my feelings about this movie, probably the best, is that Snow Falling on Cedars is beautiful to look at, but the story becomes dull and tedious to sit through.
Oh, okay.
It's just very slow. I said that to my wife constantly because she kept popping in to look at it because, it has places in it where she lived and
right. It is beautifully shot, and the snow. We've had a lot of snowy movies this year. I think back to right at the beginning of the year with
Simple Plan,
and then there was the one about the orphanage. What was that?
Yes, Cider House
Rules, and a lot of these snowy movies, they just look great on screen.
Yes. This year was actually that year where they really struggled for snow. So when they were filming this, there was a bit of a struggle for snow. So they had to. So I think they filmed a fair bit of this movie in British Columbia, which is obviously just across the water from Seattle and Washington State. And but there was actually a fair bit of it that was filmed in Greenwood, which is a town which is actually about 275 miles from the coast. But that's actually where a lot of Japanese Canadians were interned during World War II. And so they had to put signs up everywhere saying ocean and harbour, which was very confusing for tourists who came through at the same time as the production was going on. So there was actually a war relocation centre not far. British Columbia and Washington State are obviously very similar, and they're both on this sort of Puget Sound area. It's a beautiful part of the world, so the film is absolutely stunning to look at, and it was nominated for an Oscar for its cinematography, and nominated a number of times for its cinematography, actually. But yeah, it's a very slow movie. There's a lot of significant looks and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I think I might have enjoyed it a lot more than you did because I had no expectations. I
Okay.
shouldn't say I had very low expectations about this movie going in. I had no idea what it was about. I just thought it was going to be a bit of a romance with these people sort of pouncing about in the snow, Ethan Hawke.
Yeah.
But I really like the whole mystery about it. Solving the murder, the journalist sort of becoming the detective, all of the courtroom case scenes, the way that there was a lot of flashbacks, and there's a lot of uncertainty about what happened. That worked really well for me. I was on the edge of my seat for a lot of this movie. I really enjoyed watching it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I did find it. Look, I thought the story was good, and I thought that the performances by the actors were good, but I just thought it was just very slow.
Dragged a bit, yeah.
Yeah. I thought Max von Sydow, is that how you pronounce his name? He was very good.
Yeah, he's really good as the sort of elderly, whatever.
Yeah, Rick Yune. He's the Japanese soldier in the movie who, not Japanese American soldier who's trying to buy the land and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. And his wife is Yuki Kudo. And both of them I thought were very, very good.
Yeah, excellent.
Excellent. Yeah, Rick Yune has been in Fast and Furious and things like that.
Oh, okay.
I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. But yeah, look, I think there was some very good acting in this movie. I just found it very slow and ponderous. I think it could have been sped up a little bit. But then that's a problem with a lot of movies of this era.
Yeah, James Cromwell as the judge, wasn't he? He was good.
Yes. So Sam Shepard, Richard Jenkins, James Rebhorn.
Richard Jenkins was good.
Yeah. So this was produced by Kathleen Kennedy. Was one of the producers.
Okay.
She's become quite famous since then as the Disney producer.
Yeah, and Spielberg's producer as well, right?
Yeah. She's she's the Star Wars producer these days. Everything to do with Star Wars goes through her hands at some point. Yeah, so it's based on the book called Snow Falling on Cedars by David Gutterson, or Gutterson, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. The screenplay was by Ron Bass and Scott Hicks and directed by Scott Hicks, who, as you mentioned, is also the director of Shine.
Yes.
The movie itself has a 30.9% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and 67% rating by user reviews. Budget of $35 million and a box office of $23 million. So it was a commercial flop.
Yep.
And I liked the way they sort of entwined the Japanese and English perspectives.
Yeah, it was really well done.
In this movie. Yeah, so film critic Roger Ebert awarded the film 3.5 out of 4 stars, which is a very high rating.
Yeah.
For him.
David and Margaret also rated it very highly.
Yeah, Snow Falling on Cedars is a rich, multi-layered film about a high school romance and a murder trial a decade later. And it reveals itself with the complexity of a novel, holding up its themes to the light, so that first one, then another aspect can be seen. I honestly felt that it sort of... There's another comment from another critic which says that he has to fight to hold our attention and doesn't always succeed. I did find my phone coming out a fair bit because there's a lot of very slow, significant looks and all that kind of stuff. I do feel that the 2-hour time frame, it would have been better being a little bit shorter. I think some of it could have been cut. But look, it is a good movie, but it's just slow, I think. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I think it's better than its 39% suggests.
Yeah, way better.
But
I think David and Margaret gave it 4-star reviews. But just going back to Shine, I did go back and watch, because Shine is on the streaming services. So I watched a few bits of Shine, and you can really see the director's trademark style. So I think it is shot in a very similar way. Like not only the cinematography and like the slowness of it all, but also the way that flashbacks are intertwined into their plot. And like Scott Hicks wrote or co-wrote both of those movies, I think he really gets Like, it really is his trademark style. So it is a pity
Yeah.
that he didn't follow up with a blockbuster Hollywood movie after Shine. Shine was just phenomenal at the time, 1996.
Yeah.
Because that was just an
Yes.
Australian movie, and it got 7 Oscar nominations.
It did.
And it got,
Yes, that's right.
several winners. And I think, in fact, that Jeffrey Rush might have won Best Actor, which is kind of crazy because it's not even a Hollywood movie, you know what I mean? So, yeah, that's sort of when he sort of blasted onto the scene with Shine.
Yeah. Yeah, no, look, Shine was a very significant movie for Australian actors and directors, certainly for Jeffrey Rush. I think that launched his career.
I don't think it happens with the Oscars very often where an international film like sweeps the awards in that way. It was quite interesting.
Yeah, I think Roberto Benigni might have done it with
Life is Beautiful. Yeah, that was probably
Life is Beautiful.
The year directly before this.
It is
or directly
1998.
after. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So it was, like we say, the 90s were a weird time for cinema, for that sort of thing to happen more than once.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, but my story with Shine is that I was flying in the US at the time.
Right.
I had watched Shine in Australia just before leaving to go to the US, and I was on a flight.
Right.
I was on a domestic flight in the US, but I had these Qantas coupons that gave you free alcohol because on the domestic flights, it was a bit like Virgin over here. You sort of have to pay for what you want, but because I'd come from an international flight, you'd get this booklet of coupons so you could get everything for free. And I realized that I could get about 6 beers. And I'm like, what am I going to do with 6 beers? So I turned to the guy next to me and said, would you like to have a couple of beers with me? I can shout because I've got these Qantas coupons. So we got into a discussion, and he worked in Hollywood.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, I tell you what. And so we started talking about movies, and I said, I tell you what, I've just seen a great movie called Shine. He's like, Shine? I've never heard of it. I was like, yeah, it's an Australian movie. It's based on this guy that's in Perth. Because David Helfgott lived in Perth for a lot of the time that the movie takes place in. He used to play up at the Mundaring Weir Hotel. I don't know if you remember that, every Sunday.
Yes, I've been there.
But anyway, I told this guy all about Shine while we were sinking a few beers. And about 6 months later, I got an email back from him saying, you were spot on about this movie. Yes.
Oh, there you go.
So I can actually take credit for introducing Shine to at least one American who was in Hollywood at the time. But
there you go.
It's just funny how it goes. But yeah.
I was going to say that Ethan Hawke, actually, in contrast to Shine, Ethan Hawke later said that he felt that this film was not a great acting experience for him.
Okay.
He didn't feel that he did very well in the movie. And apparently some of those harbour and ocean signs remain in Greenwood for some reason, despite it being 275 miles away from the coast.
Oh.
I didn't realise they were still there.
People there have a sense of humour, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah, so apparently a lot of the Japanese-Canadian extras were actually people who were interned during the war,
Yeah,
so that it was something that they felt fairly personally. This film was supposed to be filmed in 1997, but actually got pushed back to 1998 because they struggled to find particular members of cast, and it took longer than they thought it would. So,
but it must have been a Scott Hicks passion project or something like that. Look, like I imagine that after Shine, he was given the keys to Hollywood to a certain extent. So he must have chosen this as what he wanted to work on because he was so heavily involved in the writing and so forth.
Well, it is said this is very faithful to the book, so he obviously really liked the book. So I mean, it was nominated quite a number of times for Best Cinematography. It was nominated for quite a few awards. It wasn't nominated. It was only nominated for Best Cinematography. It did win the Chicago Film Critics Awards for Best Cinematography and the Dallas-Fort Worth Critics Awards for Best Cinematography and the Florida Film Critics Awards for Best Cinematography.
Yeah.
And again, it's a very, very good-looking movie. It's a beautiful part of the world, so it's quite understandable
and I think
as well.
Quite an interesting story and set in an interesting time. And I really like the child actors as well because there's a lot of flashbacks to their childhood friendship.
Yes.
And there's one moment where they do a flashback where all 4 actors are in it. I don't know if you remember that one where they're on the beach picking up a starfish, and like it's a bit of a dream sequence. But
Yes.
It was all filmed in one shot, but they sort of transitioned from the child actors to the adult versions of those characters.
To be honest, I probably got distracted because my wife and I were talking about where it actually was.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the
whole
so
family thing.
because there's all the wood on the, which apparently is a thing, all that wood on the beaches and stuff, because they float the logs down the river and then some of them get lost and get separated and end up, and they wash up on the beach and all that kind of stuff. And some of them are quite old because that was back in the day, and they're quite heavy. They get really, really heavy because they absorb the salt water apparently. Anyway, there's lots of little things like that. So yeah, look, it's, as I said, it's a favourite of my mother-in-law, and I think, look, it's a good movie. It's an interesting story.
Yeah.
I just found it a little bit slow. I think if it had just been paced a little bit differently, it would have been better.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I do like these courtroom murder mystery drama kind of genre movies. And I always like a movie with good-looking snow in it, because I am so sick. I'm so sick of modern streaming television and their fake snow that it looks so fake. Someone's just gone through a forest and spray painted all the trees, and they try and pass it off as snow. And it's good to see movies this year with genuine snow.
Apparently when they shot The Lighthouse, which you see in the movie, that was actually in the middle of a snowstorm or an ice storm.
Right.
And quite a bad ice storm at the time. Yeah. So that lighthouse was literally covered in ice.
Being buffeted
at the
by
time.
sleet.
So,
and...
Yeah. So, yes. Anne Suzuki, it was her film debut. She's one of the younger kids in the movie.
Yep.
And Reeve Carney's film debut as well, though he had done some voice work on Pompoko, which is interesting because I think that's a Studio Ghibli movie, unless I'm very...
Rings a bell.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So he must have done the English version of that. Reeve Carney. Is Reeve Carney a girl or a boy? Yeah, no, boy. Yep. Yeah. He's also in Twilight Saga and whatnot as well. But anyway. Yeah, it's an interesting movie. The movie is mentioned during a discussion in one of the bar scenes between Jamie Foxx, Charlie Day, and Jason Bateman in the movie Horrible Bosses. And in the movie, no one wants to admit that they've seen the film. It's sort of done for a comic effect. I suppose it was sort of seen as a bit of a girly movie.
Yeah. That's kind of that's kind of the feeling that I had going into it, which is why I was reluctant to watch it, and probably why it was on the F list to begin with. But I'm glad that I saw it because it violated my expectations.
Violated your expectations?
Well, my expectations were quite low. I thought it was just going to be a romance, and it was quite an interesting story in the end. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I did think it was pretty good, but and I did struggle with this.
In terms of the movie show, it's a dead heat with this and An Ideal Husband, because it got exactly the same rating from Margaret and David.
Wow.
So one gave it 4, the other gave it 4.5, and same with An Ideal Husband.
I am surprised then that a lot of critics didn't like it then, because it's got a fairly low critic score.
Yeah, I would have expected there's a bit of the Aussie Scott Hicks factor for Margaret and David, probably. But...
Yeah. But yeah, no, it is a good movie. It is beautifully shot. I think the cinematographer deserves some kudos. Robert Richardson was the cinematographer, and the editing by Hank Corwin was excellent. And the music as well, to be fair, was very good. It was very well interspersed in the movie, like it worked well. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Snow Falling on Cedars, our second movie of the week. And now it is time to cross over live to this week's movie night for the rolling of the bingo ball. I think there's only 6 balls left. We'll find out. We still haven't had number 1, by the way.
Right.
We'll find out which movie we'll be talking about on next week's show. So over to you, future Jason. Okay, here we are at the movie night with our special guest Paul, and we're mixing. Only 6 balls left in the machine. Beautifully mixed. And she's reverse direction. A number is out. What number is it? Say it out loud.
12.
Number 12. Number 12 is The Virgin Suicides. That's a Sofia Coppola film.
completely out of touch with reality.
I'm gonna ask you out.
Bad chance.
Lux, please put your shit on this instant.
Are you, an aviation enthusiast?
I don't know if I'd call myself an enthusiast, but
Do you like to wrestle?
Look, she's laughing. He made her laugh.
My intentions for your daughter are entirely honorable.
What might those intentions be?
so much has been said about the girls over the years,
Those girls have a bright future ahead of them.
but we have never found an answer.
Her act was a cry for help.
I heard it was an accident.
Even then, as teenagers, we tried to put the pieces together. We still can't.
We got a full tank of gas. We'll take you anywhere you want to go.
That time. We've been waiting for you guys.
You're not even old enough to know how bad life gets.
Obviously, Doctor. You've never been a 13-year-old girl.
Four sisters put their own lives in jeopardy.
They'll all be gone by next year.
We would never be sure about the sequence of events. We argue about it still.
Anyway, well, it's interesting. And Virgin Suicides has been paired with Shakespeare in Love.
When will you write me a sonnet, Will?
Meet young Will Shakespeare.
I have a sonnet to write.
Sonnet? You mean a play?
He's out of luck,
I say this theatre is closed. Notice will be posted.
out of money,
I'm still owed money for this play.
What is money to you and me?
and out of ideas.
I hear you have a new play for the curtain.
What's it called?
Romeo and Ethel, the pirate's daughter.
Until she came into his world.
Who is she? Dream on, Will.
I heard you were a poet.
I was a poet till now.
Shakespeare!
My heart belongs to you, but I will marry Wessex a week from Saturday.
Is she fertile?
She will breed. If she do not, send her back.
If they find you here, they will kill you.
For one kiss, I would defy 1,000 Wessexes.
That woman is a woman!
How refreshing.
Winner of 7 Academy Awards.
I'll have poetry in my life, and adventure, and love, above all.
Starring Academy Award winner Gwyneth Paltrow,
It is a new world.
Joseph Fiennes,
Scene one. Mwah! God, I'm good.
and Academy Award winners Jeffrey Rush,
Love and a bit with a dog. That's what they want.
Colin Firth,
Tide waits for no man, but I swear it would wait for you.
Ben Affleck,
What is the play and what is my part?
and Judi Dench.
She's been plucked since I saw her last, and not by you.
The show must.
Go on.
Shakespeare in Love.
Romeo and Juliet.
Juliet? You mean it?
Just a suggestion.
And there you go, Craig. What will it be? Are you coming to the movie night tonight?
This weekend I do actually have something fairly important to get
Okay.
finished, so I probably won't make it. But
Well, let's hope it's one that you will be happy to have missed in that case.
yeah, I'm sad to look. Hopefully, after this week, I should be a little bit more relaxed, so I'll be able to.
I think next week I have to reshuffle it as well because we're going to Crowded House on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
We might have to do it on Saturday night next week. Anyway,
Right.
we'll figure that one out.
Okay. Busy lifestyle that you have. Yes.
Well, we have been doing this for 47 weeks now, you know. It's a bit,
Yeah,
it's a bit
yeah,
crazy.
it's a lot.
It's a bit crazy that we've
Yeah.
managed to keep it up for like most of the time. We have
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
shuffled around a
Yeah.
few times. Anyhow, that's pretty much everything. So unless you've got anything else to say, I think we should now throw over to David and Margaret's review of An Ideal Husband. And from me, it's goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Screen adaptations of stage plays sometimes seem clunky and sometimes they work brilliantly. How does Oscar Wilde fare in Oliver Parker's adaptation of An Ideal Husband? Oliver Parker, who made the rather dreary adaptation of Othello a few years ago, has pruned Wilde's play to perfectly fit the screen. It's a delicious, bubbling triumph of the word over explosions and car crashes. There's a really entertaining texture to the film in a more natural style. I had such a good time with this film, did you, David?
I love Oscar Wilde.
Yeah.
And Rupert Everett, I guess he was born to play an Oscar Wilde character. He does it so beautifully.
But isn't the language delicious?
Oh, it is.
That real
sparkling
wit.
dialogue.
I had one of the best times in the cinema this year with this film. I'm giving it 4.5 stars.
Well, I'm going to give it 4.